Hello, I'm Bakhtiar Sonova and you are watching A News. Let's see the top stories. Zelenskyy, European leaders and Trump discuss security guarantees for Ukraine during the Washington meetings. Zelenskyy says he's ready for a trilateral summit with Russia's Vladimir Putin. Hamas has agreed to a 60-day ceasefire plan with Israel, according to mediators. European leaders discussed the security guarantees for Ukraine at Monday's White House summit with Donald Trump. The U.S. president also phoned the Kremlin to try and arrange a direct face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelenskyy. But despite the leaders calling Monday's summit a success, it's unclear how much progress was made. Nick Harper reports from Washington, D.C.
Well, as with the summit in Alaska a few days ago between President Trump and President Putin, Monday's discussions at the White House seem to have been strong on talking, light on decision-making. It seems as if the leaders coalesced around two main issues: security guarantees for Ukraine, what they might look like. No immediate path forward was made clear after the meetings, but it could be that Ukraine is given some sort of NATO-like protection in the form of Article 5, in that NATO members enjoy the fact that if they are attacked, other NATO members stand by ready to help them. Now, Ukraine won't be allowed to join NATO. That's a red line for Russia, but it might get protection from other countries. Donald Trump is on board with providing US-backed security guarantees, but he did say that Europe would bear the burden of the majority of it. There is a possibility, as has been discussed in the past, of some peacekeeping force put together by the Western allies, including the United States, in Ukraine. But remember, Russia has pushed back against that idea. Also discussed the possibility of more meetings. Donald Trump, in a post on social media, said that he had begun to make arrangements for a direct meeting between President Zelenskyy and President Putin that would be followed up by a trilateral meeting that he himself would also be involved in. He spoke to President Putin for 40 minutes on Monday. The Kremlin, though, afterwards said the call took place, but were not exactly that emphatic that President Putin was standing ready to meet with President Zelenskyy. So it's unclear if this might take place. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that if it did take place, the timeline seems to be within the next 2 weeks. No location has yet been disclosed on where any meeting might happen. But the more sensitive issues of how to divide up Ukrainian territory, that seems to be waiting for another day. We're told that there were granular discussions inside the White House, but at this stage, Donald Trump and President Zelenskyy are saying that it will have to wait until a meeting with President Putin to decide exactly what territory Russia gets to keep and what it has to give up as part of a concessions-based agreement. And then the issue of a ceasefire. Donald Trump still ruling out this idea of an immediate ceasefire, rather pushing for a full-scale peace agreement. But the Europeans, including Volodymyr Zelenskyy, say a ceasefire or a truce is needed simply to stop the fighting on the battlefield. Again, another sensitive issue that clearly was spoken about, but not fully addressed during Monday's meetings. Nick Harper for A News in Washington, D.C.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he's ready for a trilateral summit with Russia's Vladimir Putin following talks in Washington. He made a comment after his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday. The gathering comes just days after Trump's talks with President Vladimir Putin in Alaska last Friday, and a month after tensions flared during a fraught Oval Office exchange with Zelenskyy in February. Zelenskyy expressed hope the discussions could open the door to direct talks with Putin.
We don't have any day. We just confirmed after this productive meeting with President and then with all our colleagues, with the partners, we confirmed that we are ready for a trilateral meeting. And if Russia proposed to President of the United States bilateral, and then we will see the result of bilateral, and then it can be the trilateral. So I said always, so Ukraine will never stop on the way to peace, and we are ready for any kind of formats, but on the level of leaders.
To help us understand the significance of Washington talks, we're joined by Andrei Schwarz, geopolitical analyst who is with us from Sofia, Bulgaria. Mr. Andrei, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me on your show again. Thank you.
Mr. Schwarz, how would you characterize the outcome of the Washington meeting? Did it meet expectations?
I think the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. And to elaborate, I think partially it did meet expectations from Ukraine and the European leaders. And I'm certain that also the US President Donald Trump's expectations were met because there was a lot more coordination happening behind the scenes before this meeting clearly. We were able to see that also President Trump understood certainly much better the situation Ukraine is facing, and also President Zelensky's situation as president of a country under fire for 3.5 years. Certainly much better than in February, when we remember that meeting went really bad for all sides involved, but certainly for Ukraine. So this show of European unity and then the show of the free world's unity, so the Europeans plus the United States as a unified front, is certainly a victory. And the only thing that can convince a leader such as Vladimir Putin that he needs to make some concessions on the way towards a negotiated settlement of this invasion that he decided upon unilaterally and with no real cause more than 3.5 years ago.
Mr. Schwarz, security guarantees for Ukraine are now on the table. What kind of guarantees do you think might realistically be offered?
So we need to remember what happened during the December 1994 Budapest Memorandum conversations and then the signature on the document. It was exactly security guarantees for Ukraine, as well as for other states there, Belarus, Kazakhstan, in exchange for those countries giving up their nuclear arsenal, which they inherited as part of the former Soviet Union. Of course, you understand this very well with the history of the Soviet Union. So what happened 20 years after the Budapest Memorandum was signed by, amongst others, of course, the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation, with a different leader this time at its helm, invaded Ukraine and broke its promises. It's true that also Western powers in sequence have also then decided that they are not going to enforce fully on their signature from 20 years back. Otherwise, they should have been, on the front between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. So then the question of what really is being signed in terms of security guarantees this time around, if we reach this point, is really a matter of substance. And it's of substance not only in August or September of 2025, but in 1 year from now and in 10 years from now, when different leaders will certainly lead Western countries represented in this agreement, and potentially, given the biological clock, also in the case of the Russian Federation. So, what sort of guarantees do we have that can be preserved, that can be enforced, and that can really give Ukraine some sort of trust that others will jump to its defense in case the Russian Federation decides again that it's time, perhaps 10 years from now, as we were talking, to take chunks of Ukraine or to terminate the idea of Ukrainian nationhood and statehood once and for all. So I think we need to look at a few things on the table. One is to continually fund Ukraine's defense in terms of military equipment, both defensive as well as offensive. And then also strengthen Ukraine, rebuild Ukraine economically to be able to be a viable state, and then also to make sure that there is a sort of a buffer zone force of protection between these two countries. But bear in mind, we have seen this happen also in the conflicts between other countries. We've seen it in the Middle East. We've seen it also in your region. We've seen it in Asia Pacific. We've seen it all over the world. These protection, and separation units, whether they are from the United Nations white helmets or whether they are from a specific country, have rarely worked. And so all of this will be in the minds specifically of Ukrainians and of the Ukrainian leaders who represent them. Sadly, really, to my mind, it doesn't really look like Russia is incentivized at this point to believe that, by advancing towards real peace negotiations and a ceasefire, they will have achieved anything after having lost so many people themselves on the front lines. To my mind, Russia and its leaders, more importantly, are still interested in, taking over militarily more of the Ukrainian territory, changing the political leadership in Kyiv now or in the mid to long term, and achieving its broader goals sooner or later. Via changing regime and having a friendly regime there, similar to the one in Belarus.
Geopolitical analyst Andrei Schwarz, thank you very much for your insights and for being with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hamas has agreed to a 60-day ceasefire plan with Israel, according to Egyptian officials. The deal includes the release of about half the hostages in Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. The proposal, backed by Egypt and Qatar, mirrors a framework earlier outlined by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Hamas confirmed its approval, while Israeli media reported the government had received a response. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has previously said Israel would only accept a deal if all hostages are freed at once. Morocco has delivered 95 tons of humanitarian and medical aid to the Gaza Strip, where famine continues to devastate the population. Aid access remains severely restricted, with shortages of food, medicine and rescue equipment worsening conditions for Gaza's 2.4 million residents. The health ministry said famine-related deaths have risen to 263, including 112 children. International organizations have repeatedly warned of catastrophic conditions in Gaza and urged Israel to lift its blockade to allow the safe delivery of aid. Public frustration in Israel is mounting as citizens press leaders for a political solution instead of a prolonged war in Gaza. Mediators Egypt and Qatar, backed by the United States, have already put forward a ceasefire plan that Hamas says it has accepted. However, the Israeli government remains silent.
A major highway in Tel Aviv was blocked by Israeli protesters on Tuesday. They're demanding an agreement to end the war in Gaza and secure the return of hostages. The demonstration followed mass nationwide rallies at the weekend, when tens of thousands took to the streets in one of the largest protests since the conflict began. Families of hostages joined the crowds, pressing the government to strike a deal with Hamas to free those still held in Gaza.
We started in Sunday stopping Israel in order to bring our hostages back. We find that the only thing that works is putting pressure on the Israeli government to make a deal, to seal the deal and bring all of our hostages back and stop the war in Gaza. We will not stop until all our hostages are home.
Israeli officials say around 50 hostages remain captive since the 7th of October attacks, but only 20 are believed to be alive. The protests come as Hamas announced it has accepted a ceasefire proposal mediated by Egypt and Qatar with US backing. The 60-day truce plan includes the release of half the hostages in exchange for Israel freeing a number of Palestinian prisoners. Senior Hamas official Bassem Naim confirmed the group's approval, while other Palestinian factions also informed mediators they support the deal. So far, Israel has not officially responded to the proposal, though officials confirmed it was received.
India says talks on Monday with China have been productive. Foreign Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi discussed border peace, trade issues and bilateral exchanges, aiming to strengthen cooperation between the two countries. The meeting in New Delhi comes days before Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is due to visit China.
Lasting progress of a positive relationship between India and China hinges on peace and tranquility along the disputed border. That's according to India's Foreign Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar, who met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in New Delhi on Monday, saying the talks were productive. As well as discussions on border peace, they also discussed trade issues and bilateral exchanges, aiming to strengthen cooperation between the two countries.
Having seen a difficult period in our relationship, Excellency, our two nations now seek to move ahead. This requires a candid and constructive approach from both sides. In that endeavor, we must be guided by the three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. Differences must not become disputes, nor competition conflict.
The Chinese foreign minister said exchanges and dialogue at all levels between both countries had been gradually restored and bilateral relations were returning to cooperation. Wang also urged both powers to see each other as partners and opportunities. This marks the first high-level visit by Wang to India in years, arriving ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's trip to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in China later this month.
North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un slammed this week's joint U.S.-South Korea exercise as an obvious expression of their will to provoke war, according to state media. He insisted that a nuclear element in the drills means Pyongyang must rapidly expand its nuclear forces. The 11-day Ulchi Freedom Shield drills involving roughly 21,000 troops kicked off on Monday and will run until the 28th of August. They are on par with last year's scale, though 20 of the planned 40 field training exercises have been pushed into September. President Lee Jae-myung is offering a hand toward de-escalation, but analysts warn Pyongyang likely won't buy. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has called the summit in Washington a turning point for his country and the region. In his address to the nation, Pashinyan said the agreements signed in Washington, D.C. have ended decades of conflict with Azerbaijan. He described the post-August 8th period as a new reality of peace for Armenia and the South Caucasus. Now we stay in Yerevan, where Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian is on an official visit to Armenia. His trip comes at a time of heightened diplomatic activity in the South Caucasus. Meanwhile, Tehran has rejected what it calls the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, warning that the presence of American companies in the region would be a worrying development. What does this mean for regional geopolitics, and how might Armenia-Iran ties evolve in this context? To discuss these issues, we're joined by Orkan Nabiev, a political analyst from Baku, Azerbaijan. Mr. Nabiev, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Mr. Nabiev, what is the significance of President Pezeshkian's visit to Armenia at this particular moment?
Of course, without any doubt, the most important topic is a trip. It's a Trump route for international peace and prosperity, and the concerns of Iran regarding this route. So Iran several times said that they are worrying about what's happening, and they have their own concerns. and they vowed to raise Iranian concerns directly to Armenian officials. So one of the major things, Pezeshkian came to Armenia to talk all the details regarding what's gonna be in the next after the signing the declaration of trade, how Americans will participate in the Zengezur corridor, how Armenia, how this road will be inside the sovereignty of Armenia, and what kind of effects, positive or negatives, Iran can get from this road. So main topic is this, and parallelly there are other topics, for example, 10 documents, treatments to sign, and etc. So, but main concern is about, of course, about the Zengezur corridor.
So in your opinion, why does Tehran see the presence of American companies in the South Caucasus as a potential threat?
It's obvious because since 1979, Iran declared the United States as a diabolic, as a Satan, and they call it like a big Satan, and they always had their foreign policy towards anti-Americanism, anti-American imperialism. And now having the American base after the United States together with Israel bombed Iranian nuclear plants, and after this, having the Americans in the border, directly in the small place where the Iran and Armenia connected, and this is a road for hope for Iran. In the future, they won't use this small borderline to have access to the Black Sea. And considering all this, if American will be there, Iran afraid that they will cut from the Black Sea ports.
So how might this visit impact Armenia's balancing act between its relations with Iran, Russia, and the West?
Actually, Armenia trying to do their best, and we saw that at least they came to agreement with Azerbaijan in the White House. At the same time, we can also emphasize the fact that Armenia tries to find some common points and to close them together. And Pashinyan tries to convince Pezeshkian, and not only Pezeshkian mostly too soft. If we were compare other conservative forces in Iran, for example, Sepah, Islamic revolutionaries, or the Mullah regime, and he tries to convince Iran, Pashinyan tries to convince Iran, so Iran also will get access to this road. They will use this road. Eventually, they will have access to the Black Sea. So now the main point of Armenia, they try to find the common point of Russia, Iran, and United States, at the same time having good relations with Azerbaijan and Turkey.
Mr. Nabiev, looking ahead, what are the main challenges and opportunities in Armenia-Iran relations given the current geopolitical climate?
Iran is not in a good situation right now. The economic crisis in Iran goes very up, so it accelerates. At the same time, we saw that inflation rate is at 40%. At the same time, there's a big problems with electricity and petroleum. Iran is a petroleum country, and the energy should be very cheap in Iran. But we saw that there's a big blackdowns. We saw that there's a lack of electricity, lack of gasoline in the gasoline stations. So yes, Iran is going very bad, and the situation is getting exacerbated. And in this situation, Iran has no other choice that to accept the fact that trade will be open, and Iran should do big reforms and to become and start a new dialogue with the West. Otherwise, Iran will have the big problems inside in their country, in the inner politics, because the situation is getting worse and worse. And this main obstacles is in Iran is to having conflict between conservatives and these people who wants to have dialogue with the West and solve this conflict that goes from 1979. Pezeshkian and the liberals, official government of Iran, they want to go further and to talk with United States and Europe. And I also want to add one phrase of Pezeshkian. He said that you don't want to talk. He addressed it in the parliament towards the very aggressive and radical Islamists in Iran. He said that you don't want to talk. Well, then do you want to do what you want to do? Do you want to go war? Going to talks does not mean to go to the surrender. Going to talks, it means that we will have the more opportunities cooperation. And your policy that comes from the last 40 years will was ended with bombing of Iran. So you were telling that you want to destroy Israel, but we saw that Israel came to our sky and they bombed us. And in this situation, he directly and radically addressed to the Islamists in Iran and saying that we have no other choice than dialogue with the West.
Orkan Nabiev, thank you very much for sharing your insights on this important subject. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Turning to Georgia's economy, the country's foreign direct investment in 2024 has reached $1.57 billion. According to Georgia's National Statistics Service, that's down almost 19% from 2023, but nearly 18% higher than initial estimates. The UK was the top investor, followed by the Netherlands and Malta, together making up more than half of the inflow. The biggest chunk of investment went into finance and insurance. Syria's food security is on the greatest strain in decades after the worst drought in 36 years has slashed wheat production by around 40%, squeezing the country's cash-strapped government. The failure of securing large-scale purchases threatens millions who depend on subsidized bread.
Syria is facing a potential food crisis after the worst drought in more than 3 decades, which has devastated wheat production. That's according to the United Nations, which says that this year's drought has cut national wheat output by about 40%. The UN is warning that around 3 million Syrians could soon face severe hunger. More than half of the population of 25 million is already food insecure. In the country's northeast, often called Syria's breadbasket, farmers like Abbas Othman from Kamishli have been left with no crop to collect.
This year we planted 6 hectares and we harvested nothing. The crops didn't grow, and even the shepherds didn't benefit from the land. We incurred huge losses, including farm wages, seeds and fertilizer. We lost all of these costs.
The shortage is a major challenge for Syria, which is trying to rebuild after the 14-year civil war. Wheat is Syria's most important crop, central to its subsidized bread program, but the government has been slow to organize large-scale imports, according to experts. Officials say only around 373,000 tons have been bought from local farmers this season, half of last year's volume. The government still needs to import about 2.5 million tons.
Local production does not cover more than 2 to 3% of local demand, especially after a year of drought that hit Syria. Never in Syria's history has there been a year like this one, and therefore it can't be relied upon, especially since the main food in Syria is bread.
In May, President Donald Trump announced the lifting of US sanctions on Syria in an effort to support recovery. Yet despite this, Damascus faces delays in payments. Russia, once Syria's main supplier, has largely suspended deliveries since December, citing financial problems and uncertainty about the new government. Aid workers and traders warn that without urgent action and international support, Syria could see its worst food crisis in decades.
Flash floods in Pakistan have killed more than 300 people since Friday, and officials warn the toll is still climbing. Entire villages have been swept away in the country's north as authorities scramble to rescue survivors under the mud after landslides. Rescue operations are underway again after hours of delays from heavy downpours.
More than 300 people have been killed, and officials warn the toll is still climbing as relentless monsoon rains trigger catastrophic floods across Pakistan. The hardest hit areas are in the mountainous north. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, sudden downpours sent floods rushing through villages, destroying homes, bridges and livestock. Authorities have declared an emergency, but rescue teams say many people remain missing beneath the mud.
This was a natural disaster which wiped out our entire village. Some people were taken away, some were saved, but many are still missing under the mud.
In Pakistan-administered Kashmir, one family of 6 was wiped out overnight. Survivors now gather at gravesides, praying for those lost.
There was very heavy rain, as if the day of judgment was approaching. Houses were damaged, about 300 or 400 people died, and our whole village on this side was destroyed.
In northwest Pakistan alone, officials say that more than 300 people have died in just 2 days, marking the deadliest downpour of this year's monsoon season. And the threat isn't over. For now, villages across northern Pakistan remain cut off, their residents left mourning, waiting and bracing for what the skies may bring next.
Uzbekistan and Afghanistan have taken a major step toward expanding their energy cooperation. Agreements worth hundreds of millions were signed between the two countries. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more.
The Uzbek Minister of Energy, Jorabek Mirza-Makhmadov, and Special Envoy Ismatullah Ergashev arrived in Kabul, where they met senior Afghan officials and congratulated them on the 4th anniversary of Taliban's return to power. During the visit, the two sides signed agreements worth $243 million for 4 key electricity projects. These include expanding transmission lines and substations in Kabul and Nangarhar, allowing Afghanistan to import up to 1,000 megawatts of electricity from Uzbekistan within the next 18 months. Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs Abdul Ghani Brada urged the timely and high-quality completion of the projects. Minister Mirza-Makhmadov assured that Uzbekistan is ready to begin work in partnership with Afghan companies. Uzbekistan and Afghanistan share not only a border but also deep cultural and economic ties. Energy cooperation has become a cornerstone of their relationship, with Tashkent playing a vital role in supporting Afghanistan's infrastructure and regional connectivity. These agreements are seen as both an energy lifeline for Afghanistan and a signal of strengthening bilateral relations between the two neighbors. Tamim Bahis reporting for A News from Kabul, Afghanistan.
And preparations are well underway in Astana for the 8th Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions. This large-scale event will bring together representatives from over 60 countries to discuss important global issues. The Congress will be held under the leadership of Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Our correspondent in Kazakhstan has the details.
On September 17th and 18th, Astana will host the 8th Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions, a major international event bringing together spiritual leaders and experts from around the world. This year, the forum will be chaired by Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev and is expected to welcome more than 100 delegations from nearly 60 countries. Among the participants are leaders of the world's largest and most well-known religions, but it's not just religious figures. Representatives from international organizations, scholars and public activists will also take part. Over the course of 2 days, attendees will discuss pressing global challenges and the role religious leaders play in addressing them. The focus will be on promoting interfaith cooperation, combating extremism and finding ways to build lasting peace. The event will conclude with the second forum of young religious leaders, which will place special emphasis on involving youth in advancing interreligious dialogue. For Kazakhstan, hosting this Congress is a significant milestone. The country is home to over 130 ethnic groups and 18 religious communities, so issues of peaceful coexistence and mutual respect are especially important here. What's more, hosting the forum strengthens Kazakhstan's international image as a neutral platform for dialogue between East and West. In today's unstable world, this Congress provides a crucial channel for discussing ways to peace and cooperation. The first Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions took place in Astana back in 2003. Since then, it has become a regular event held every 3 years and has grown into a respected international platform for discussing religious, humanitarian and social issues. Considering that around 85% of the world's population identifies with some religion, the involvement of spiritual leaders in global affairs is more important now than ever before. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News for more.